Hello, and welcome back to the Ambassadors of Gaming. My name is Michael, and today we're going to go through and we're going to talk my best games of the year. Now, to lay down the ground rules for this, we each picked our own set of games that we thought were phenomenal this year and built our list around them. These games aren't numbered, one's not better than the other. We just think that these games were the exemplary games of the year, and thus we put them on our list.
So first up on our list is Digimon CyberSleuth. It came out in February of this year. It's a port of a Japanese release. Digimon has always been a series near and dear to me, but that bias aside, I feel that doesn't keep this game from being a great game, especially a great Digimon game. CyberSleuth is the first mainline Digimon game to be released in the West in 8 years, and the first console release in 9 years. As a fan from the first Digimon world, this game gave me the JRPG kind of experience I expected from a Digimon game. The story was something new and coherent, and the localization was quite interesting. The game has a beautiful sense of style to it, and the mechanics make it flow so well as a turn-based monster game. CyberSleuth offers a wide variety of intriguing new features for a Digimon game. You are instead a detective instead of a normal tamer, and this brings along abilities. Interestingly enough, this is also the first Digimon game I've seen where the evolution tree is not split. Like in Pokemon, one Pokemon can only evolve into one form. In this Digimon game though, as you can see, you can take any Digimon and digivolve it into any other Digimon, which lets you build, at least for the competitive online mode, and I mean for the game, a extremely strong team with the right set of skills you want, with the right set of abilities. So you go through the skill tree and you get all of the abilities you want first, then you come back to the Digimon you want that it has its own ability and skill, so you come back to the one you want that has the best skill. And this is intriguing because there's around 250 Digimon in this game, which gives you a large variety of Digimon to pick through and build a team. So congratulations to them for working through all of that and having the idea down to create this web of evolution. CyberSleuth was the sleeper hit of the year for me. I didn't expect it to be great, just to enjoy the nostalgia of my childhood. That is not what I got. So thank you, Bandai Namco, for listening to our pleas and giving us support. This year, Telltale took on The Dark Knight to create a world of their own and to tell a story with many tweaks from what we've seen in a traditional Batman story and a traditional Batman game. It truly feels like you are interacting with a Batman television show. The characters feel right. The choices, most of the time, feel like something Bruce or Batman would say or do. And it gives you an interesting insight into Bruce himself, not just as Batman. It gives you plenty of choices where a situation might be better handled by Bruce Wayne instead of going in as Batman. But throughout the story you learn which way you want to take things, and those major decisions give you choices to alter slightly the way the game is and the way the world is impacted. The action sequences feel fresh, they feel powerful, they give me kind of an adrenaline rush when I play it because it just gets me so pumped up. That aside, it is a Telltale game. It has its faults in terms of its engine, in terms of bugs and issues like that, but those even didn't hinder my experience when it came to the core of what the game was. It's a Batman game, it's a Batman story, and it's original, and this gave us a new perspective on things. And I believe it gives you the perfect balance for hardcore and newer fans of Batman. Having finished the first season, I hope they're able to continue working in the world they created and flesh it out more and give it some more depth, and I hope DC continues to partner with them going forward.
Time to save the city.
So our third game up here on the list is Titanfall 2. Titanfall 2 does a great job of improving on the first game's experience. Titanfall gives a different approach to the way an online shooter is played, with the abilities and mechanics of the Titans very similar to the first game, but it feels more fleshed out in certain areas, but it also feels a little more distracted in others when it comes to the online multiplayer. It is a hell of a lot of fun to play and continues to be an enjoyment to me even this late after its release. Granted, it only released in October, but with Titanfall coming out in between Battlefield and Call of Duty, it did not fare too well in sales, but it still was my preferred shooter this fall. I'm not a huge shooter fan, but I feel Titanfall gives me the experience I look for in a shooter. I want that fluid motion. I want to be able to just feel like I'm extremely powerful, but also easily defeated by enemies. It's a very strange way that the online is set up, and the most of the reason I'm talking about the online is it's the most important part of the online shooter, at least nowadays. Titanfall 2 did have a campaign. It was not phenomenal. It was not a great campaign. It wasn't terrible, but I feel like it would have had more emotional impact if Titanfall 1 had a campaign, and then Titanfall 2, even if Titanfall 2's campaign was where it is set now, but it followed the pilot that dies literally at the beginning of the game. If it had followed him in Titanfall 1, maybe it would have mattered more in Titanfall 2, the story in general, and playing as him. And it gives me a sort of Modern Warfare flashback. The story isn't as powerful as Modern Warfare because we didn't have any connection with the characters or world outside of just knowing Titans and pilots. I think Respawn should be proud of what they've accomplished with this game because it is a phenomenal game. It just got screwed by its release date. Now granted, if Titanfall wasn't your preferred shooter this fall, then so be it. It's just the one I preferred to play, and it's the one I preferred to spend my money on. World of Final Fantasy, when I bought it, seemed to be a more traditional JRPG, a more traditional Final Fantasy game. Having skipped out on Pokemon this generation, I desperately wanted a monster fighting turn-based game, and World of Final Fantasy filled that void. In a way, it has a Kingdom Hearts sense to it. The art style and characters are very goofy and silly, but quite enjoyable. I actually find myself laughing quite a bit while playing it. The progression system and the way in which the game uses the creatures and the players makes for an interesting balancing act and makes you think more deeply about how your team is set up and how you go about using them depending on the area you are in. This also allows for interesting ways outside of combat, such as there are ice sections of the game where you need a monster that has a fire-breathing ability to get past these giant ice blocks. So the team you have also works in the real world as much as it does in battles. The progression system for the monsters is also very interesting in the way that they learn spells and abilities. It seems more like a traditional Final Fantasy, and it reminds me a lot of Dream Drop Distance in terms of the way the characters interact with the creatures they find, along with the way the skill tree is set up and the way you unlock points. You don't have to take care of them in depthly as you do in Dream Drop you have to carefully think about the way your team is set up. Basically, it's a more in-depth, grown-up Pokemon, and honestly, that's fantastic. And I hope we see more of these from Square Enix. Alright, it's time to talk about one of those games that's going to be a nifty one for some people. Final Fantasy 15. Now, why did I put Final Fantasy 15 on this list? Because I think it's a great game. I think it deserves to be recognized as a great game. Do I think it's a phenomenal game-changing game? No, I do not. But I think it succeeds in where it tries, and what it tries to be is an adventure with 4 dudes set out to do some stuff and to get that stuff done. I have not spent a lot of time with Final Fantasy as a series, so I don't know how valid my opinion, I guess, is to Final Fantasy fans. So after being in development hell for years and years and waiting for it to finally be released, and it was still more than I was expecting. The game opens up with an open world and the aforementioned bros trying to get the prince to his fiancée Lunafreya. This game gave us a world and the characters live and breathe in it. They feel right, except for where they're not supposed to, such as the 4 bros. They don't feel right in the world, and they're not supposed to. They're supposed to feel out of place. They're supposed to feel like they don't belong there. They're supposed to live in a big city, in a castle, that kind of stuff. After finishing the game, I feel more like it was like a television series, and there were lots of highs and lows, but at the end I felt like everything came full circle, but I was also left with this empty hole. I feel the need to dive back into that world and spend more time with those characters and kill some more things. And that's what I believe makes a truly great game. I want to talk a little bit about the progression system before I end this segment, because I believe that's one of the standout points of the game. The skill tree is set up in a way very similar to World of Final Fantasy. It encompasses the entire team, and the AP is earned from the entire team. So you see perks that require more AP, such as 70, 333, 999 AP for one perk. But every time you get a new perk, it feels like you earned it. You feel like you've spent all this time and you've done all these things, and there's so many different ways to gain points. Every time you upgrade, it feels worthwhile. And you want to get those points. You want to go on long drives. You want to go fishing. You want to go camping. You want Prompto to take photographs. And that's what makes the game special, is the way everything works together so well, at least in my opinion, that it creates a fluid flow when you know it's a game and when it's an experience. Thumper is, to quote the developers, a music violence game. Thumper has this dark, gritty, but metallic look to it that creates a sort of atmosphere, and in combination with the loud noises and blasts throughout the levels, gives me this form of anxiety through the music. Thumper is also the first VR capable game where I feel more comfortable playing it in PSVR than I do on my television. Just having the full range of motion and listening to the music through the headphones keeps me enthralled and on my toes for every little jump and corner. The rhythm to the songs is always slightly different, and each level feels like a verse to a song. So when you play the entire level all the way through, it feels like one coherent song. But even if you were to put it down for a while and come back and start in the middle of a level, the song feels as if it was just starting up. And that is the beauty of Thumper. The sound design is so good and down to the nail, making each button press and every level feel rewarding while also making you grab your controller for dear life. Thumper keeps things beautiful while also giving me a sense of dread, and for that, it earns its place on my Game of the Year list. Now, before we get to our final Game of the Year, my final Game of the Year, I wanted to give some honorable mentions, and the only reason they are not officially on the list is partially due to I can't record gameplay for some of them as I don't have the game anymore, or I didn't know the right segments to pick for the certain one. So the honorable mentions are Uncharted 4, the conclusion to Nathan Drake's story. It was a phenomenal game, great exploration, great story, and it felt like, for the first time for me, an Uncharted game that was what everyone said Uncharted was. I played 1 through 3 and I just didn't think they were up to par with what everyone claimed they were. I believe they're great games, but I don't think they're any better than a 7 or an 8, the original 3. But playing this one, it felt like the culmination of The Last of Us in combination with Uncharted, and it gave it the feel I enjoy from The Last of Us in the parts of Uncharted with the story that I enjoyed. So it was a good conclusion to Nathan Drake's story, and I think it deserves a spot on this list. The second honorable mention is Gears of War 4. I never beat Gears of War 4, I still have to finish it, but I enjoyed thoroughly what I played of it. I played Gears 3, I played a little bit of 2, and I played most of 1. So I understand Gears, I understand the world, but I understand that for Gears fans, it's about the characters, and that's what's most important. And these characters seem much more lighthearted in comparison to the original cast. They're a little more optimistic, they make jokes a little bit more, they're a little bit more lighthearted, whereas the original Gears seem very dark and gritty and hopeless for most of the time. And they felt like they were going to die. And they were soldiers, so they obviously have filthy mouths and shit. But Gears of War 4 feels like the evolution Gears needed to continue going in a way that made sense for it. Storytelling, mechanically, it feels like Gears, and that's the best part of Gears, is the mechanics. The way you stick to walls, the way the guns feel to shoot is just fucking amazing. So congratulations to the Coalition for creating a Gears game that feels like a Gears game. Now, the last one on my list is a 3DS game, so kind of surprisingly, because I don't really play my 3DS very often, but I believe it is well known that I thoroughly enjoy Dragon Ball. And we reported a while ago that Dragon Ball Fusions was a game that was coming out in Japan, and then very quickly it got announced that there was going to be a port of it to the West, and that was a game I felt I needed to play. I thoroughly enjoy Dragon Ball, and as with Digimon, I try to buy as many as possible that come to the West to support localization for those games, because I want to see more of them, and publishers only understand money. I picked this game up on the basis of the brand, but it's a game that truly mechanically feels different than most Dragon Ball games, as it's turn-based, but it's also team-based. It's very different for a Dragon Ball game, but it feels fresh, it feels new, and it feels nice. And the most interesting part about Dragon Ball is always how they can spin a new story out of the stories they already have. And I think Dragon Ball Fusions does a great job of creating a world and creating a story that makes sense. Makes sense for the world, makes sense for the characters that already exist. But the beauty lies in that it feels more like a Budokai game in terms of open world, flying around a map, spotting random characters in the world to get side quests, to unlock more characters who you can fight with and fuse with, and the fusion aspect of the game adds a whole different layer of depth to it, because the way the fusions can work together creates a dynamic in which you might want to train somebody that you normally wouldn't, such as Krillin or Tien or Yamcha. They have fusions with other characters that make them significantly more powerful and make them much more enjoyable to use, and that creates a nice flow so that when you get more powerful characters, you don't maybe necessarily swap them out, as I've had the same team since the beginning of the game. I've just fused the characters I've had since the beginning of the game together and created a very powerful team. So going forward, it gives you a different sort of experience, such as Vegeta, Goku, all of the staple adult characters are not unlockable from the very beginning. Hell, I'm like 10 hours in and they're still not unlockable. The game gives you a different sort of flow and feel, and it makes you feel a part of the world. And I think that's the most important part of it. Alright, so here's the last one on the list. Let me be honest, there was no way in hell I was making this list without Doom on it. I was skeptical on Doom, as I had played the first and the second, and I wasn't so keen on their gameplay. Now, this was in 2010 that I had played these, not when they were originally released. A friend of mine had shown me some of Doom's gameplay, and I decided to pick it up. Doom 2016 is a phenomenal all-around experience. The music, the sound effects, the combat, the exploration, they reminded me of the previous games, but in a way that felt so new and refreshing that I just couldn't put it down. Doom proves that games can go through hell and can come out and prove that they are worth the struggle and hard work the developers put into it. The footage I am currently showing of Doom is for the arcade mode, and the reason I picked this specifically instead of the campaign is partially for spoilers, and secondly for showing off the fast-paced nature and brutality of the game, and to show just what the core of the game is. Now, there is a story to Doom, outside of just Doom guy wants to kill shit. Granted, that's most of the story. Doom guy wants to kill shit. There are plenty of backstory you can pick up throughout the game, and if you play the game in an exploratory way and you find the collectibles and you care about getting the archives and things like that, it will improve your experience, because those link the current Doom to the original Doom, explain how those worlds are interconnected. So there is a actually pretty deep story and lore there if you so choose to dig into it. But if you don't, the game is perfectly fine. Otherwise, the story is kind of meh for a sci-fi, but that's not why we play Doom. We play Doom because we like to kill shit, and Doom just indulges us with massive amounts of demon murder, and that is phenomenal. Thank you, Doom, for existing. Thank you for not being a piece of shit. Thank you for being one of the best games of goddamn year.
Thank you guys for checking out my Game of the Year list. I'd like to wish you all a happy holiday and a good new year. We have some things in the works for the new year that we're planning, and we'll see you then. We hope you're excited as we are.